Hello, welcome to another episode of LEGO Gotham Specters. This is a unique series where I break down my hypothetical reboot of the LEGO Batman franchise in gaming. I want to explore this concept in extreme detail, so much so that I've split it up into mini episodes that go into specific aspects of characters, levels, and the gameplay. In the last video, the first episode, I started the series off by explaining the basics of this version of Batman. What would he look like? What is his backstory? And how would his gameplay even function? Today, I'd like to present you a refined version of this Batman, this time in 3D, accounting for some critical feedback from that previous video. But first, I'd like to address some misconceptions. I don't think the last video fully articulated the video format I'm trying to go for and how it relates to what the actual game would be. I'm coming up with these concepts first and foremost as a huge LEGO Batman game fan. The first game in 2009 defined my childhood and was the catalyst for getting into Batman as a character. Batman Arkham Asylum was the next big step, which started my obsession. Coming from these circumstances, I have a certain perspective on Batman that has grown. What I'd want in a LEGO Batman reboot is likely pretty different to what others would want, and that's fine. While I'm trying to make a game that is somewhat plausible and doable, it's still my dream game. What you will get in this series is a passion project that I'm going to put tons and tons of thought into, and I think that could be pretty entertaining. To expand on the misconception, I'm a game designer, and so I'm making this series with that mindset. What you will be getting at the moment is essentially pre-production. This stage involves a lot of planning, iteration, and ideas, some of which are solely there to assist the development, assist me. I think some people came away from the Bruce Wayne backstory in the last video thinking the main narrative would be some kind of serious political drama, which is pretty reasonable since I didn't clarify what the backstory is for. Generally speaking, I wrote this backstory to assist me as a developer in writing world building and scenes with this character. If you understand a character well enough, they begin to write themselves. It makes the process a lot easier if you fully understand a character, even things about the character that the audience might not even see in the final product. None of this backstory will actually play out in the game. It's all sort of like undertones. It's kind of the same way Star Wars is technically sort of has a lot of adult themes, but the LEGO games portray them in a lighthearted way. The final version would have many hints of it, yet it will never be directly told. The player, if interested, could piece together this information by paying attention to environmental storytelling, like newspapers, but ultimately it's primarily to help make a cohesive world, something players will only notice subconsciously. LEGO is meant to be goofy, often extremely fantastical, and while the game is definitely going to be more grounded, that identity is still very important to the concept. I'm chasing after a specific contrast between the seriousness of the reference material compared to the goofiness of LEGO, and I think that combination could actually be pretty interesting. I'm even heavily considering making all of the characters mute like the original LEGO Batman game, because I think it would be quite funny to have these serious characters articulate complex thoughts to each other only using body language. Like, how are they gonna do that? These serious heroes would also be in contrast to the playable villains, who are often seen as ridiculous C-listers. And you know what? I'm not gonna beat around the bush anymore. I'm just gonna reveal who these villains are. Of course, each of these villains will get their own dedicated video breaking down their designs and backstories, but for now I'm just gonna reveal who they are. Our first villain is the Eraser, an extremely underrated Batman villain. Bright and colorful, yet his gimmick is quite grim. Specializing in the cleanup of other villains' affairs, he erases entire crime scenes from existence. Next is Calendar Man, someone who shows up a lot, but does very little. This version wouldn't just be a bald dude sitting in a cell, he's going to be a part of the action this time. His gimmick is often seen as limiting, but I see it as a challenge. Next is Ratcatcher, another fantastical character that actually has been getting a little bit of love recently. He's the king of the underworld and leader of a rat army, hoping to take back Gotham from the real pest. Glad we get to see Ratcatcher in Arkham Shadow, but it would be even cooler to actually play as him. Lastly, one of my all-time favorite yet abandoned Batman villains, Anarchy. I'm likely going to explore why I love anarchy so much in another video, but the villain is another highlight of a time with more colorful and decorated villains. While a LEGO game may not be able to give full justice to the topics anarchy teaches in his comics, it would be a nice introduction for many people to a lost comic book character. Okay, with the tone clarification out of the way, let's see what I did with Batman's 3D model. This is the final result. I got a lot of different impressions in the last video, definitely a variety of different opinions on it. Some people thought the design was a little bit too detailed, so I did take some steps to make it a bit simpler in the 3D version, but of course I didn't totally reimagine it. Ultimately, I respect people who want these hypotheticals to account for actual LEGO sets and production. Minifigures are really small, so the stitches on the face probably won't even be seen on a real minifigure. It's just too small. But my main priority with this concept is to facilitate the game. The game comes first. For me, this is a LEGO Batman game. That's where my love of LEGO comes from, is the games. Since this is a game, you're going to see these minifigures up close, and so I took that opportunity to add extra details. Of course, if this were to be a real game and they printed pieces and sets based off of it, then they would just make simplified versions. If you're looking for more content specifically focused on hypothetical LEGO sets, like sets that could actually exist and you could build them, then I highly recommend this video by Mycopath. Okay, let's break down the different parts of Batman here. The belt is based off of the LEGO Batman movie minifigure, which has a unique belt piece that you put in between the pelvis and upper body pieces. It actually makes the figure slightly taller than normal. Of course, mine has a custom belt design on the front, just like the concept art. The belt was probably the hardest thing to do because I had to basically extend the sticker onto other pieces. It's not just on this custom belt piece, but it's extending onto the pelvis and the upper body piece. This kind of gives the effect that the belt is a lot bigger and it's a lot heftier. I made the van braces from scratch based on the concept art, but these are actual pieces that exist in LEGO sets. They have some sticker designs on them, but it's not that complicated. Obviously, this wouldn't be printed if they were going to be real minifigures. I think these add that sense of realism to this Batman. The suit is all about utility rather than flair. I contemplated making the symbol a sticker, but I don't want to cave in too much to the criticisms. I personally love having a 3D symbol. It was actually quite fun to make this little symbol, and I love the way it turns out. It just calls way more attention, and it kind of adds to the cowl. In real life, it might not work, but in the game, it'll add a lot. Maybe Batman can take it off and use it at some point, kind of like the Batman movie. Don't worry, it won't be a makeshift axe. Okay, when it comes to the cape, I know some people are heavily wondering about this. Again, just like in the case of these smaller details, since this will be super up close, personal, immersive, why not have a more physically interesting cape? But just for those who are curious, here is what the standard cape would look like. The collar is also custom, as you can tell, but I could imagine it working in real life with a possible custom chest piece that has snap points on it or maybe magnets underneath. Imagine this collar is a really flexible piece of plastic that you push around his neck to equip. This was also my first time using cloth simulation in Blender, and it actually turned out way better than I expected, to be honest. It was clipping and like freaking out a lot on the gauntlets, like the spiky bits, but I ended up kind of moving out of the way, so it just kind of worked. It folds up in a way that matches the Robert Pattinson cowl, which I was like heavily basing it off of, but also still kind of looks miniature in a way. It's definitely like a very high quality custom material, and I'd kind of like if they approach these sort of capes in real life with newer minifigures maybe. Batman's helmet was easily the most important thing to get right here, and I think it's the thing that people wondered about and commented the most on. From the start, I wanted a custom helmet. I imported the most recent iteration of Batman's helmet and attempted to alter it in Blender. I added in the most noticeable, unique aspect of my concept, which is the double-layered bottom. But ultimately, just messing with an existing helmet wasn't going to work perfectly. It was just too sharp and angular, and I really didn't like the topology I was working with. So I sucked it up and I went over to ZBrush and imported this model where I could manually sculpt the helmet to be exactly what I wanted. This version is a lot more refined and smooth. The ears turned out great, like it's probably my favorite part, and something about the back angle just works so well. It reminds me so much of the Batman. Of course, if you watched the last video, this isn't like canon to the Batman, it just takes a lot of inspiration from it. The nose was also a super important thing to get right on this model. I wanted to move away from a very sharp and pointy nose just because that's been done so many times, but also I wanted to take inspiration from a more vintage looking Batman where it has a nose that isn't super angular. When it comes to the sticker details, I went through tons and tons of iterations. At one point it kind of looked like a luchador and that was becoming a huge problem, but in the end I opted for a more simplistic design. I even wrapped the sticker around, which further accentuates the back, as you can see. Now that it's 3D, I think the idea I wanted to get across in the concept makes a lot more sense now. It's a hybrid of the Robert Pattinson cowl and Lee Bermejo's 1943 rendition. I think this model turned out amazing. It looks really cool in the renders, and I really do look forward to what people think of it now that it's actually in 3D and there's not really any misconceptions about what exactly is going to be on it. This model did actually take tons and tons of time to make. I had to retopologize the mask. Maybe that won't amount to, a huge long 20-minute video, but I just wanted to share this and bring a highlight to this series and have an actual 3D model of Batman. Going forward, all of the other characters will have a 3D model version. I just think it makes a lot more sense. I can pose them, I can show the back of them. It's going to be a lot cooler from here. In the next video, we will be doing Nightwing. I'm actually super duper excited for Nightwing because I haven't really done any Nightwing things before, and I actually want to give it a try. I think it's going to be a very unique design. I'm going to combine the Silver Age aesthetic with a lot of the modern elements, and I think it'll be a design that's pretty unique and you probably haven't seen before, and I really want to do the character justice. So if you want to see that soon, then please like this video. It would be great if this is worth it, so please share this around. Please help me fight the algorithm. I know my audience is out there, I just need to reach them. Also, check out my other stuff. I have another hypothetical series where I'm going to be remaking Arkham Knight's map, so please go over there, continue to support it, and I will reward you with more. And I hope you have a good day. Thank you for getting this far in the video. I super duper appreciate it, and I will see you in the next episode.